So I'm just going to click go live right now, and then I'm going to wait 10 seconds before we start because of the way that YouTube streams, but we'll get started in a second. And if people are hopping on, we'll see that in a little bit. Yay. Trying to count to 10 real quick. All right, you guys, we're going to get started in just a second. If you are a member of the Accountability Success Circle, give us a holler in the chat. We are going to say hello. And if you're watching this on the replay later up, we've got JR, I see Terry, we've got some people already showing up. This is awesome. For those of you who are just tuning in, or if you're stumbling upon this webinar thinking, what is this? This is a webinar series hosted by the Accountability Success Circle, which is a global community of like-minded people who are trying to accomplish amazing things and have fun while doing it. And this month, as we do it every month, we feature a special topic or theme focused on everybody's personal growth. And this month we decided, and I'm super excited about this because I've wanted to have a theme surrounding this for a long time, but the theme for the month of July 2022 is money. And today's webinar is going to discuss the secret to mastering money. And we've got a really awesome guest that I'm going to introduce in just a second. But we're going to really talk about some really important keys to finding success in money. And for those of you who are watching live, feel free to chime in with any ahas, any questions you might have that we can address during this webinar. As you know, our webinars are very casual style. We kind of see where the conversation goes with some, very pointed key points that we want to make sure that we cover. But this is here for you. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Accountability Success Circle, stay tuned because I can talk about that towards the end. And we're missing Gary today. He is at an engagement right now, so he might hop in on the chat a little bit later, but I've got my trusty sidekick Rebecca to hang out with us here today and continue to fuel the conversation. So hi Rebecca, thanks for being
Hello.
here. And if you can help me manage the chat as people are chiming in, that'll be awesome. And without further ado, we can introduce our awesome guest, who I had the amazing opportunity to briefly meet at the World Domination Summit last month. We didn't have a lot of time to chit chat, but we were able to have a really good conversation after the fact. He is now an Amazon best-selling author. His book came out the day that we came home, and I am so excited to share that. I'm going to just read your bio, David, if that's okay. So David is an Amazon best-selling author, entrepreneur, and real estate investor with a background as a financial advisor and marketing director. But most importantly, and my favorite, he's a dad. He's been investing since he was 11 years old and is passionate about passing on the lessons he's learned. So he's going to, and he does through this graphic novel, which I got both of my kids to read, called The Golden Quest. So if you are a visual learner, it doesn't matter if you're a kid or an adult. I read it. It was amazing. And this book teaches kids and adults how to live a rich life and create the freedom for what is most important to them, which is he calls the awesome stuff, which we'll talk about today too. David's a contributor to Entrepreneur, Thrive Global, The Good Men Project, and a millionaire mentor for Money Club, and has been featured on countless podcasts. So now he can add this one onto his list, but including Impacting Life 24/7, The Dad Edge, and The Mind of George show. So David, welcome.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. This is gonna be really fun. And I like that it's all about money. And you kept asking, yeah, but could we add some like mindfulness stuff? Could we add some other pieces? And that really is what I specialize in or try to push. So yeah, I'm super excited about this.
Absolutely. And, I think, there's a lot of different perspectives about, how to look at money. And, I think the conversation tends to be, like, all right, so how can I get rich and how can I make more money? And what do I need to do to have more money? And that is actually going to be one of the first points that we talk about. Because I think, at least for me, I get triggered a lot. And this might just be based on, previous experiences that I've had in the past where, the focus is like, okay, how do I have more money? How do I make it? How do I find, I think a lot of what was wired in terms of how I was raised was, go to a good school, or get good grades in school to get into a good college, to then get a good job that pays well. And then that's kind of the key to making more money. And there's all the investing and all of that stuff. But those were kind of like the first main steps of like, do your work in school, get a job that makes a lot of money. But we all know that only takes you so far sometimes. And then if you are, in that upper echelon of people who can be successful, you can, then reap the benefits of the money, but maybe you're working yourself to burnout to the point where you have all this money that you can't even spend. And then there's a happiness factor that goes into play when it comes into money. And so, I would love to have the conversation, or, by the end of this hour that we're together, is to really think about like, how is it that how do we define a rich life, right? Because we could be millionaires or billionaires or whatnot, but if we don't have the opportunity to, use that money wisely, where does that lead us? And you hear from people that, money can't buy everything. And so how do you have that rich life, but also the happiness embedded that comes with it? Because I think that we all know that we need to make money and need to know and be educated about money because it's just a part of how we live. But what is the secret to actually mastering this money idea? And so maybe, David, if you wanted to just, I know that I didn't give you much time to share more about yourself if you wanted to, but maybe start with that, and then we can dive right into just this whole topic of why the concept of finding out how to have more money is not the right conversation that we need to be having.
Yeah, no, I love just diving into this stuff. And that's exactly what I found. So some of this is stuff that I've always felt, but to be honest, a lot of this as well just came through writing the book, having conversations with parents, and just observing and noticing exactly this, where the only conversation we have about money is how to have more. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like having more isn't a bad thing. And we do need to take more judgment out of money in general. And even with the book, I try to teach habits so that you could have more money. But what really became clear is that that's the only lesson we're ever taught in terms of money. How to have more is the only question we ask and the only lesson we're taught. And because of that, it doesn't matter how much we have, that's all we know. So at any level of, wealth, the only thing we're thinking is, okay, now that I've achieved this, what's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? And that's where it really became clear to me that the most important lesson, and the one that we're typically not taught, is why we want more in the first place. And that should be the foundation. And then from there, you can still learn these lessons, but it doesn't have the same sort of fervor where all we're thinking is more, 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 more. We've already sat on what's really important. So when you talked about happiness and what you're looking for, that's exactly it. If you know what you want and what's important to you, then you can start, moving in that direction and having all of your choices based on that. And that's what I call the awesome stuff. And it's really cool because it applies to adults, but adults, we already have all these feelings around money, and it's these difficult, influences that are sometimes hard to break. But young kids, they just get it. And so it's so fun to see like a young kid just start realizing what is important to them. So instead of saying, do this job because you can have more money, or do this thing because you can have more money, or go here, or they know what they want because they've figured out what's important to them. And then the rest just falls into place, because a lot of money, it's really habit. It's not any of the things we think it is. It's the right habits over time. and you can, create that wealth. But understanding what's really important to you, that's something that we tend to lose. And I think that for me is what's got me so excited about the book, because that's the whole basis of what's really important. That's going to drive that happiness and rich life and everything else. And the beauty is it's unique. It's unique to everyone. So there's no judgment. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. It's all unique. And that's why I try to brand everything around this idea of the awesome stuff. And my website's the awesome stuff, and just sort of trying to get that idea out there into the world. So that's how we think of things, is what's our awesome stuff.
I love that. And before we dive into kind of really talking about the awesome stuff, I know that there are some people who haven't, so we can plug your book a little bit, but do you want to give us like a shorthanded, like, here's kind of what the story is about, which we're going to talk through in adult terms on this webinar, but I'm going to also flip through some pages so that you guys can see, but can you share with everyone what the book is about?
Well, basically it's a young boy who goes on a quest, and I wanted to just make it a fun story and a fun adventure, because I found usually this stuff, when you start talking finance and money, people get bored very quickly or they tune out. So I tried to think of how to make this fun, and also what's really important, because I've been doing this for so long. I was really into the weeds and I'd really get into it, and a lot of it doesn't matter. It's really habit. So on this adventure, if you think of like a classic hero's journey, something you'd see in like Star Wars with Luke Skywalker, that hero's journey where he starts, on Uncle Ben's farm and then becomes a Jedi. It's this classic hero's journey where this young boy goes on a quest to learn how to have more money. And at the beginning of the quest, he's thinking of all the riches he's going to have. And then along the way, he meets different mentors that just teach him different lessons. And there really aren't that many lessons, because it really is habits and mindset, and it's not as complicated as we think. So he goes through the adventure, and then at the very end, basically gets told, learns the secret. And really the secret is that this is a journey, and he's now on a journey that he'll be on for the rest of his life.
I love it. Here, I'm going to show this. This is what I was talking to him right before. There's the picture of the dad saying, oh yeah, it's going to take you to this treasure, but look, he's got the blue glasses. How cute is that? And the illustrations are fantastic. It's definitely a fun read. So get it on Amazon if you want to. Okay, so the book kind of talks about, how to find the awesome stuff. What is that?
So the fun thing,
how would you define it?
So the awesome stuff is really what's important to you. But what I find interesting is asking this question of people, how difficult that question might be for a lot of adults, or how much we think it might be one thing or might be another. So, I mean, I love posing the question to people to find out what is their awesome stuff.
So let's do that for the people who are on watching live, and maybe Rebecca, if we can have you chime in as well, just to make this a little bit of an exercise. David, you can facilitate.
Well, so if you think of what's really important to you, so in the book, the boy laughs and he's like, no, like everything I have is awesome, because that's how we think. It's like all of our stuff is awesome. And it's really not all of our stuff. It can't be all of our stuff. So it's, what's the stuff that you really love, or that you never forget, or that just brings you so much joy, like those few things that really are important. So in this case, if talking to a child, it's like, okay, if you think of your entire room full of things, what's the one thing that you always go to, or the one thing that you love, or the one thing that has stayed consistent as something that's really important to you? And it's really around bringing joy, not like this is, my best, most expensive item or my most precious item. It's what brings you joy, and trying to recognize that. And then as well, as people are starting to think of their awesome stuff, you can also think of it as, it could be experiences as well. It doesn't always have to be stuff. It's just what brings you joy, what is your thing.
Yeah. So as an example, I asked my youngest son, after he was done reading, and he's 11, I asked him what his awesome stuff was. And the first thing he said was electronics. And then he took a step back and he said, and he gave me a hug, and I was like, oh, that's the cutest thing. So I'm apparently awesome stuff. So, Rebecca, when you think about this question, what do you consider as your awesome stuff?
Well, these are the same prompts I use for meditation for people. So it's like I've revisited these things a lot because it's also like, ooh, when you think of the joy, then your mind can open up to like this meditative space. So it's such a great prompt that I love. Like right away, I can't help but think of coffee because I've got not one but two coffees here in front of me. So it's like coffee. I really love just indulgent kind of pleasurable-y things right now, especially like taste. So it sounds silly, but like coffee, ice cream, just space, like having an open day, like all of that just brings me total joy.
Nice. One thing I'll mention, so as you're even talking about it, and this is what happens as adults, how you said it sounds silly. And I've heard that a lot, or sometimes people will prompt for like 2 minutes about why their awesome stuff is crazy, but it's still their awesome stuff because they feel so much, guilt or outside pressure, or maybe this isn't what you're looking for, or maybe it has to be something bigger. But that's really the thing is what you love and you know what brings you joy. And once we can break down all those, feelings around it that maybe make us feel guilty, then we can really just start pursuing those things. And that's what's so fun about this, because there is no right answer. And over time, you'll find it changes as well. The biggest thing I notice, as far as like you're asking, Apryl, a good way to sort of land on it, because I know some people, they might say what you think they should say, or maybe what they're thinking of buying or something else. But it's almost like when you start talking about it, you can feel it through your whole body. So you just get excited. You get excited talking about it. You get excited thinking about it. And that's the thing is, for Rebecca, if it's coffee, you could almost see her just like right now smiling as soon as she hears the word coffee. That's the awesome stuff. Because if it's bringing just the thought of it is making her smile, it's your thing. And it doesn't really matter if it's expensive or not expensive, or, it's common, like if it's bringing you joy. And then the beauty of that is then you start to not feel the guilt around it. So I know people who, different things, their awesome stuff might be biking, and they felt guilty from spending so much money on bikes. And then after reading this, realizing, no, like I don't spend money on all these other things that people might spend money on. This is my thing. This is what I'm excited about. And it is their awesome stuff. And then with young kids, the beauty of it is when they might have like a temper tantrum, or they're begging or they're bugging, like, hey, mom, can I have this ice cream? And then you ask them, was that your awesome stuff? Just the fact of asking that question, having them pause and reflect and look at it, and then decide, is this really what I want, or is this not something that's that important to me? That's it. Like that is the magic in this whole conversation. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. But then that leads to everything else. So when we talked about this idea of just more, more, and more, if that's all we know, then yes, you'd want the ice cream, because if you can get it, that's one more thing you have, and you want the next thing, you want the next thing. But when you start reframing it as that your awesome stuff, then you start recognizing, well, what am I just having? Do I just want it because it's there? Do I just want it because someone else is there? Do I even care? And once you start asking these questions, you start recognizing like what is really important to you. And a lot of times, most of what we think is awesome really isn't. And that's sort of what the boy learns on this hero's journey. And a lot of times I see adults learn that as well. Like we'll tend to attribute things that we want to buy, or we're striving for, or we've seen as our awesome stuff. But when you start talking about it, those things don't have the people light up the same way. They're not animated, they're not smiling, they're not excited. It's just something they're striving after.
Yeah, I love that. And Terry chimed in the chat saying his sketchbooks are his awesome stuff. He has is amazing artistry, so great. So that's awesome, Terry, that your sketchbooks, we'll have to get you to share some of that in the community. And when I was thinking about awesome stuff, I feel like mine are all based around experiences, but I think also just listening and, thinking a lot about this a little bit deeper. For me, it's like trying new things. And even if it's the same thing that I've done before, it's doing that and trying it differently, such as, I published a book that felt really awesome to be a part of that, but the actual process was a lot more stressful than I thought it would be, but the only reason that I'm doing another book is because I want to enjoy the experience. So making all those investments all over again. And of course, thinking about the fact that now I have to, start to gear up financially to be able to fund this, or to traditionally publish and, find the means to be able to do this. It's a different way, but it's leading me to that experience of, this is going to be awesome because it's not something that I've experienced before. I'm going to do the same thing, but do it differently. And so for me, it's having those experiences, going to different places for, vacations, and also connecting with people is a huge piece for me. So that's my awesome stuff. It's, honoring my values that I have tattooed on my arms, doing the fun stuff, accomplishing something, connecting with people, and doing it in an authentic way. Like anything that is related to those values is my awesome stuff. So yeah.
What I'll say, for like with that, what's so fun, and the reason I mentioned it's a bit of a journey, is because there isn't, I keep saying this because we have so much judgment around just things in general. There isn't a right or wrong answer, and it will change. And the idea is just that awareness, and then noticing. And again, the in the story, the boy sort of told like that becomes your bar. So then when you think of these things, so if Rebecca's thinking of coffee and how much joy it brings her, or ice cream, or these decadent things, and then she's looking to pick up, an on sale cookie at a grocery store, in your mind, you're like, is this going to bring me the same joy as when I think about these other things? So same with you, like right in the book. So it's almost like that becomes your bar. And it doesn't mean that bar doesn't move. It just becomes your bar. So then you can start recognizing, no, this doesn't get me as excited or lit up, or, I don't feel the same thing in my body or the excitement as I would with my first book, for example, if that was the case. But if the whole process is getting you just as excited, then you're like, that's great. And then in doing this and just being aware, you slowly start recognizing more and more those things. So your bar starts to rise of what you do consider awesome, because the stuff that isn't just keeps falling off, and you sort of, you start pursuing more of that. And that's what's really exciting, because if that is your thing, a lot of people talk about like, all I want to do is, I want to make so much money so I can, just spend time with family, or I could travel, or I could buy this thing. And they talk about these things, and then they just get caught up in work, or the process, or the pursuit of the money. And those things never happen. They're not spending time with their family, or they're not traveling, or whatever it might be. And so then you have to really, just that awareness, ask yourself, is that really, like, are those things important to me? And if they are, why am I not incorporating more of that into my life? Because there's not like a destination where it's all of a sudden like, I've got all the ice cream and all the coffee and I'm good. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where you experience these things as you go along, and just it isn't a destination. It is just a process of being aware of what's important to you. And the more you reflect on that, and that's where kids usually know that. And it's over time as they age where they forget. So it's a great opportunity just for them to just not lose that, and keep recognizing that. So rather than, oh, you don't like that, and you're not really into this, and that's not what you want to do, we start guiding them away from, no, this is, we see the kids when they light up and they run around and they're just laughing and they're playing and they're in the moment and they're present and they're thinking of nothing else but what they're doing. That is their awesome stuff.
Yeah. That's good. It's making me think about it. And I feel like if my ex ever watches this, he'll be like, oh no, that was me. But I dated somebody in college, and he went into investment banking out of college, which, is a very lucrative career, but it also is, in terms of your personal life, it is your life. Your life is your work, and you make so much money, and then you don't really have a lot of time to spend really enjoying that money. So it could be like a great kickstart, but it all, in my opinion, and not to knock investment bankers, it's not sustainable. And I think that there is like an excitement maybe about the chase of the money and how much you're making, especially being just out of college and not having made money before. But then, I remember that on, one of the Valentine's Day that, he had already been working, and I was still in college, and he was out, and he was really, really tired that day. And we went and got, Subway sandwiches and tried to watch a movie, and he fell asleep during the movie. And that was my Valentine's Day, because he just didn't have, I think maybe he sent me flowers and that was Valentine's Day, which I would have probably rather had, a really, even a sit down dinner to have conversation, and just, or even, doing something else that was experience based, that just allowed connection time. And, so it was like all the money in the world just couldn't, because there was a lack of time, couldn't buy that, like that good experience for that. And, I'm not mad at him for it, but it was just like a realization of like, this isn't the type of way that I would want to live. And I would never want to have, money be the source of, or having to work and grind just to make the money and then not have the opportunity to spend it. There has to be a balance somewhere. And everyone loves how balance is. And Sophia just came in. So, hey, Sophia, we're just talking about money. If you are just chiming in, we're talking about awesome stuff that brings you joy when it comes to your life, and when we're tying it into money. So, but yeah, so there's that. And, another story that I think about is when, I was working as a consultant and, almost having one of those jobs myself where I was traveling a lot, making really good money. And my brother was graduating from high school, and family is number one for me. Family is definitely some of my awesome stuff. And I had asked to fly out for this work engagement a day later, because I didn't want to miss his graduation. And they told me to pick my job or my family. And my mom told me to just go, and it was going to be okay. And if I have to regret anything in my life, that was, one thing where I basically chose money over my family, and that did not feel awesome. So it's really thinking about what that awesome stuff is. So yeah, that wasn't fun. And I never had that memory. And I think I bought my friends and my family tickets to see Miss Saigon, and they all went together without me. And that was so painful to be missing out on that. So yeah, sucks. But
Well, and you start to see with that as well. So the awesome stuff isn't just what you buy or where you spend things on. It is just that awareness where then you start noticing it. It's the work you choose. It's, the family you spend time with. It's your friends. It's all these things. And with that as well, and again, we want to be careful with the judgment thing. So the work, so even like the investment banking, it's not the job. Is that what you want to be doing? And that's the thing is, there's so much judgment around all this. Like for yourself, for example, like you want new and you want to experience these new things. Someone else might like that, but if you're doing it solely for the money, but not really anything that you love, then it's gonna suck, and you're gonna hate it, and it's gonna burn you out.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's just being aware. Like, is this something I enjoy?
Yeah.
Or am I doing it purely to have more money? And if it's purely to have more money, then why do you want the more money? What are you trying to do with that money? Because the money in itself doesn't actually do anything. It's a tool for something.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And short term, yes, we're all going to have, jobs we don't love and parts of things that we don't like. But in general, it makes so much more sense to pick something that you love, because if you hate what you're doing, it's going to be a grind.
Yeah, that's true. And I think too, like when people get into investment banking, there is definitely an excitement to it. I don't know if it's the most sustainable, but my ex does not work in investment banking anymore, but there's, different jobs serve different purposes, right? So I think that is good to notice the judgment around that as well. Because, I absolutely have no problems with people who want to go that route. But, I think it's also good to know like what works for you. Like I would never go into investment banking because I saw firsthand what that did to people that I cared about, and it was just not the choice for me. And I don't know if that meant that I just knew a little bit more back then what awesome stuff was, or for me at least, maybe it was awesome for him.
Well, it's the alignment. The stuff that was awesome to you didn't align with that. So that's the thing, is it's not that it's a bad thing. It's that what's important to you isn't sustainable in that career.
Yeah.
And so if someone felt this, and that's why I love this awareness.
Yeah.
Because if time and spending time with family is one of your core values, and you're in a job where that's not sustainable or possible, then you've got that disconnect.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that for everyone that will be their awesome stuff, but it's an awareness. So once you start having that awareness, then you start questioning, okay, well, if the whole reason I'm doing this is so that I can, hit this goal where I retire and spend nothing but time with family, but it's going to take me whatever, 20 years or 30 years or 40 years, am I really doing that because family is most important? I want to spend that time, or is it something else?
Mm.
And it's, again, just that awareness, and it's a question, and the answer doesn't really matter. And that's the same when I was talking about the child with the ice cream cone. Parents are always asking me, like, well, what if the kid says it is their awesome stuff and they want the ice cream? Then they want the ice cream. Like, that doesn't matter. The answer doesn't matter. But if that same child then is like, and this and this and this and everything's awesome, everything can't be awesome. Yeah. So when they turn around and say, oh, but I also want this, to be like, oh no, you told me the ice cream was your awesome stuff, and that's where we got that. Which one do you like more? And that's the whole thing, is what do you like more? And it doesn't matter what the answer is. It's just that slow awareness. And I don't know all the answers. Like, there's a lot of times where I'll think I like something, and then I do it or buy it or experience it. I'm like,
never mind.
That wasn't as, like, I didn't feel as excited. And then something else I did where I'm like, oh my God, like, that was the most exciting thing I've ever done. And, I'm on a high for it, months later, or even, years later, thinking back.
Yeah.
So,
awesome. Yeah. So for those of you who are watching, whether it's a replay or live, this is, your first task is to identify your awesome stuff and really think about, what brings you joy. And then we can go into the next conversation that we're going to have about, like, actually, how do we then get ourselves to have that awesome stuff if it's not, financially feasible now, or, or how do we work towards that? Because I think that identifying the awesome stuff is a great way to kind of push out all the fluff of things that we might be spending on because it's not awesome. And if we're then wondering, well, I don't have enough money to do XYZ, is it because we are focused on non-awesome stuff? Is that what you would say, David, in terms of, like, a good first step is, like, once you identify the awesome stuff, kind of do a little audit of, like, what am I spending on that is not awesome? Or do you have
that's because all of a sudden next we're going to lean into, the next step is the habits to start working towards, saving and building some wealth. Yeah. And so, definitely doing that audit is a good first step, because if you don't do that audit, you're going to be chasing. And if we're chasing, you're always going to feel like you don't have enough. If you don't feel like you have enough, it's very hard to start saving enough or saving at all if you're in this feeling of just lack. So that's the first step. And then then we start the habits. And that's the thing. So even the boys, like, okay, well, is this how I become rich? And it's like, well, no, this is the first lesson. It's the first step. It is the most important. So usually when I'm talking to people, it's the one I sit on the most. And partly because it's something we usually don't think about, especially when we're thinking about money and creating wealth, but it is important. But then the rest, it's really habits and time. And so if we want to get into that, we can start talking about
so let's talk about this. So we've got some habits on money. I do want to talk about time, and then there's a couple other things at the end that I definitely want to briefly touch on as well, because I know that money mindset has been a big topic of conversation with a handful of people in the ASC. But so let's start talking about habits. So there's 4 different habits, right?
Yes. So the 4 habits, the first one's only buy the awesome stuff.
Okay.
That's the golden rule number 1. And the second,
that's connected to just how you spend, right? Only buy awesome stuff. So it's really thinking about the money that you're putting out. Is that really fueling your joy, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then that stops, basically the beauty of that only buy the awesome stuff is that awareness. So you're just not chasing. If that golden rule doesn't exist, it doesn't matter how much money you have. Like we see billionaires that are still chasing because it's all they know is what's the next thing, what's the next thing. So they're still chasing. And then we see other billionaires who aren't, they're not chasing. And the key difference that I think is knowing what really is important. So that's why that only buy the awesome stuff, it's just a way of being aware. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, in my opinion, it doesn't matter how much money you achieve, you'll never have enough or feel like you have enough.
Yeah. And Gary just chimed in on the chat. So he's here and watching. Hey, Gary, we miss you. All right. So that's one. So spending habits are only buy the awesome stuff. Okay. Then once we master that, or once we've got that habit on lock, then what's next?
So the second one is always save first.
Always save first. So putting money into savings or putting some money away for a rainy day.
Yeah, like that's the whole idea of like wealth. You can't create wealth at all if you're not saving. But usually what we try to do is we save by budgeting or saving last and try to have a little bit left over, which is almost impossible based on our human nature. And so that's why, like, we've heard it over and over again. Like, this isn't a novel idea, but I try to illustrate it for like the kids where, there's a dragon who basically, same idea, plans to, save a little bit at the end every time. But inevitably the dragon loved cookies, would spend all her money on cookies and never have anything left over. And so the saving first, it sounds simple, but that's the whole beauty is it is simple. And the reason for it is that we tend to spend what we have. And so we can all remember a time in our lives where we earned or made or had less. And now we don't know where that money went, where we were fine then. And now where did all that extra money go from your last pay, your pay raise or your new job that makes more? We just forget about it because we quickly just spend what we have. And there's this thing called lifestyle inflation. So I definitely spend more now than I did when I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily have more better stuff where I'm happier. It's just, we just level up. So the saving first puts a cap on that lifestyle inflation, looks after your savings, and there's no thought towards it. So it's almost like taking the money that you didn't know you even had and just putting it away without actually even recognizing it. Because what I'm trying to really create, I don't mention in the book or really talk about it, but I do in these conversations.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get someone to a fixed destination because there is no destination or a fixed amount of money. What I would love to see is where money stops being something that people are even thinking about.
Yeah.
So it's not the first thing they think about on every one of their decisions or something they're worried about, and it's constantly there. So this whole saving first, the key is to automate it in such a way where you don't even notice it. And it's so easy to do nowadays. Like banks will help you do that. Employers will help you do that. Like there's a lot of ways to just have your money just never even hit your bank account in a way where you ever even see it. So when you go to look at how much you have to spend, that money's already gone. And you just get used to having a little less. And it doesn't have to be a lot less, just a little less. And once you get in that habit, you quickly don't realize that money's even gone.
Yeah.
But if the opposite happened and I told you like, okay, cut your spending today by 10% or 20%, it would be almost impossible to do.
Yeah.
But moving forward, if, just any raise or any money or extra money, 20% was put away, you wouldn't even notice that amount.
Yeah.
If
Do you
that makes sense.
I mean, I know that everybody's financial situation is different, but let's say there's somebody who's like, at a place where they haven't been saving at all, and they want to start, but they're also kind of, on a very, very tight budget. What would be your suggestion to that person in terms of just getting something to start saving? Would it just be like, even if it's a few bucks, or if it's, it's set something in place and than if you get like extra bumps. Like what would you suggest to somebody in that position?
Yeah, like depending if it's really tight and it's really difficult, like we all have those situations where, we've been, we're starting out or certain situations and it's just, there just isn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
But as much as you can, it's more you're trying to create the habit is more important than anything. So yes, if it's a small amount, but it's a habit and it's saving, that's great. Or if it was one of those things where you're just like, I can't do it, it's impossible, then maybe moving forward, anytime you get money above and beyond what you currently are earning or receiving on a regular basis, that all starts going towards savings until it becomes, ideally, I think 20% would be a good amount.
20% of your annual income?
Yeah, of what you earn, what comes in.
Okay.
And that varies. I mean, people will say 10, 20. It does vary. I mean, anything is better than nothing.
Yeah.
But if you look at how long we're living and the goals we're trying to reach and what we're trying to do, 20%, and you essentially, depending on what you do with that money, your money will be earning more than you in 20 years.
Yeah. And
so
also for those people who are parents of kids, trying to teach them how to save first, but getting them started on that early. Like what's your strategy with your kids in terms of getting them to save? Like for me, just as an example, I had this when my kids were, or when I was growing up, but like all of their birthday money, anything that they get, like is sitting in a savings account that's just making money. They don't know that it's there, and they get like an allowance of like a small pot of money that they can tap into to buy their awesome stuff. But by the time they get to college, then we will give them control of that savings account, and that kind of gets them started. So like, what would you suggest to parents of, with young kids that are, trying to teach this habit early?
Yeah, well, and there's quite a few different ways. It really depends on your child and what you want to do and what you're trying to create. Mm-hmm. It's just creating the habit. So I know some will set up a savings account. So all of a sudden, grandma gives them $20 and they're like, okay, we're going to take $2 or $4 of this and put it into your savings account. And then you have the rest left over. Some will just say, we're doing this for you, or it'll link into their account, or there's jar systems where you can put money in jars and physically see it. It's just knowing that they're in the habit of everything that comes in, a portion gets put aside, and that's your savings. Awesome. And getting in that habit. So when you think of like, when I was mentioning in college, what I had, if I was following these lessons in college, and every time, like my first job, if I took 20% from everything I earned from my first job and just started putting it away automatically, I wouldn't really feel the pain from that. But over time, I mean, if you thought back now, like I'm in my 40s. So if I look back, if I was in my 20s and 20% of everything I ever earned was invested or saved, that's a lot without actually affecting my lifestyle too much, because I would have just gotten used to having less. And so that's why it's sort of the first step towards saving. So like you said, so if people are tight, just try anything just to build the habit. Mm-hmm. And then the habit starts happening. And then as things come in, maybe recognize that. Because a lot of people, what'll happen is all of a sudden something comes in, they're like, I should treat myself, I should do this, I could go buy these things. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're never saving, you're never gonna, like, that's the first step towards having more.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're always going to be stuck in this cycle of paycheck to paycheck. So that is the first step.
I love that. Gary just chimed in. Great point on creating the habit of saving. Rebecca, do you have any thoughts or ahas before we move on to tip number 3?
No, though it does bring to mind, like, so for me, like these, I love in the mornings, if I want a good coffee right now and it means buying like a $6 or $7 latte, I go do that. But I'm also in a place right now where I am like doing the paycheck to paycheck thing. So I get to that point where I'm like, I need to save, but then I know that this is fueling me in terms of like buying the awesome stuff and keeping myself. So is there also like maybe a little whatever amendment or something of like, can you budget just a little for the awesome stuff and save? I know you loosely said that, but
yeah. So that's a perfect question. And that's what I try to get at with this whole thing. So so if you think of lifestyle inflation, I don't know if you've heard that term. It's basically like as you have more, you spend more. So in your case, like you're mentioning, Rebecca, like I love these things too, but I know if I had a lot less, I would make different decisions in terms of where I spend on my luxuries. And it wouldn't feel like a huge loss. I just would. So, for example, as I have more money, all of a sudden I'll spend more on art that I typically wouldn't. Or maybe my trips become a little bit more extravagant. Or when I go out for a nice dinner, I might get the appetizer or the drink or the more expensive items, or not just order off the sale menu, because I feel more comfortable because I have more money. And that's it just happens naturally. Like we're very good at, oh, I have a little bit more, I can splurge, I can do this, I can do that. So that cap, it just makes you like, it forces, like you then would make those different decisions. Like if you suddenly had less money in your bank account, you would make different decisions, right? And it's not, and I can't tell you what those different decisions would be, or even what the right decisions would be, but you just do. And that's this whole thing. And that's why I mentioned it as a habit, because that happens in the same way where if suddenly you had, $10,000, $20,000 more, you probably would be spending even more, or buying more, or splurging a little bit more than you do. So it's just, we know what we have typically and adjust accordingly. So if you started playing with that a bit and started feeling like you had a little less, or you're like, okay, no, I got to set such and such away, you start making different decisions. And it might not be the coffees, because the coffees are your awesome stuff. You might be like, you know what, I can stretch this out a little further. Or maybe instead of spending some money on gas here, I'll do this. Or even just in general, if you're really tight, a lot of times you start, for me, this is a little bit off topic, but I find a big thing is focusing on taking away all these luxuries. Oh, if you didn't buy coffee and you extrapolate that out, you become a millionaire. That's not where you're probably spending the majority of your money. Like if you looked at your expenses, there's probably a few things. For most people, it's going to be, either, school, or it's going to be definitely your accommodation is going to be one of your major expenses. So, I mean, that's where you can play with the dial. And to me, don't drop the $5 or $7 coffee if you can spend, $500 less on rent. Right. And even that, and then that becomes a choice. So do I love the place I'm in and the location and the ease of this home, or would I rather have more freedom where I can travel and try new things or have more coffees? And that's the thing is with the awesome stuff, it's not we do it all. It's what do we love the most? What's going to bring us the most joy? Or, the financial freedom of just knowing I had a little bit more in the bank and I wasn't so tight. Maybe there's something you're willing to let go. Or maybe no, you're like, this whole place brings so much joy and I love this lifestyle. I am willing to live a little bit tighter on the edge because that's my joy. So you just play with it. There's no right or wrong answer. And you just play with it a little bit, but you will notice, like if I threw more in your hands today, you probably spend a fair amount of that and change your lifestyle slightly. In the same way, if all of a sudden like you lost your job or something happened, you would cut some stuff automatically. I mean, we all do it.
Yeah. Thank you for reframing that, because it is, and I've seen a lot of the memes of like, quit buying the avocado toast, millennials, and like all that stuff, where it's like, this is not helping you, but it is. Then there is this kind of like, yes, but there's probably some other things that aren't bringing you the joy to not spend money on. But if that avocado toast or latte is helping, it's so, it's like kind of an 80-20 sort of like, starting to have different awareness around where it's going. And is that ultimately the thing? Because if I like that example, if there were less money coming in, what would I cut? I still would find ways to get the coffee because it is that valuable to me. I would cut like the Pilates membership I have, like there are other things like that. So to give that specific, that was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And then that's the thing is we know sort of what we're willing to cut. And that's why the saving first forces that. Because for most of us, I mean, there's a few special people that are just good at budgeting, but most of us aren't. So if I have the money in my hand, I'll spend it on the Pilates membership. But if you automatically save first, you're like, yeah, okay, I'll cut. because you don't even have it to spend. And that's the whole trick, is it takes away this decision or this budgeting mindset of trying to, force yourself or have less to achieve the saving, to just making it a habit where you didn't even know you had the money to spend on Pilates. So you didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So should we talk about step number 3 or the third habit or
Sure. Yeah. And they're easy. Like these are they're for kids, but they really are, they build, like this is everything, because we have this, we want to just hustle and have money and have a quick fix and a quick answer. This stuff is like, I can't guarantee that you're going to all of a sudden, sell a book and make $10 million. But if you save and follow these steps, your money will grow and will start creating more freedom and wealth for you. So the next step, it's send your money to work today. And really, it's just this concept and idea of taking those savings and then investing it. And the whole point is showing how compound growth, it grows exponentially. And we can't typically see how fast that grows, but it's massive. And so that whole lesson isn't trying to teach people how to invest, because we don't need to. There's people that can help us with that. It's showing them how powerful that investment and growth is. So then when you aren't doing the Pilates class, for example, you recognize why, because if it's a $50 membership or $100 membership, that doesn't sound like a lot. But over time, if you start seeing how things grow, it does start making sense. So if you think of the stock market averaging 10% over its lifetime, that's going to vary. You can't guarantee that. I'm not saying that you'd want to budget based on a 10% return, but if I'm just going with easy numbers like 10%, that means your money invested would be doubling almost every 7 years, which is a lot. So if you think like 7 years, it starts doubling, that's a lot. And using that same sort of formula, if you started investing like today, and whatever amount that was, and every year investing that same amount for 7 years and then just stop, if it was earning 10%, that's me coming along later and starting in 7 years, I would end up investing for the rest of my life and never catch up to how much your money is making for you. Because within those 7 years, that money is already making more than you were contributing. Yeah. So this idea of compound, it's massive, and we don't always see it. And especially for our young kids, that is huge. And so I know, for example, if we think of like Warren Buffett, who's one of these, this brilliant investor, and that's who a lot of us look up to. A lot of people argue the reason he's so wealthy, not only has he made amazing decisions, but he's lived a long life and invested for a long period. So if you think of all the money he has today, if he was earning 10%, that money again doubles in 7 years. That's a lot of money. And so time really, you do really want to take advantage of that time. And that's why the saving first, starting right away, investing and starting right away, and giving yourself as much time as you can. It'll feel small in those early years, but it'll start growing faster and faster.
Yeah. And I know that this is such a big topic and there's so many different things, but I think just the idea of, can you get yourself, once you've got some sort of stable savings, to then put that savings to work and do it as early as you feel comfortable, right? Because I think, with the investing, there's the whole concept of, you want to make sure you have enough liquid cash, and you want to be able to, if you're going to invest certain things, like, if you need it, are you going to be able to access it? But if you're acting like you don't need it anyways, then let it grow at a higher rate of return, right?
Yeah.
But then also not knowing anything about it, there are people out there that can help you. So don't try to struggle through it yourself. Like I'm not the one in my family that deals with all the investment stuff, and I have no idea what's there. I just know that we've been saving since we were in our 20s. And so like watching that grow is really, really fun. And it validates some of the things that you're saying here. But just trying to get into that space of investing as early as you can, and don't get so scared about it, because there are people that are there to actually help you. Right.
And that's the thing is just don't have the barriers to it, because we create barriers or we make it seem like it's more complicated than it is, or I don't know anything about investing, so how can I invest? You don't need to. You can lean on someone for help, find the right people, and start. And even with any amounts, like I've, a parent recently, like their daughter, I think, just read the book, saw it, and I think just even started with like $5 or something in like a Wealth Simple account or something like that, or tagged onto the parents. Like it doesn't have to be a lot. It's just getting into that habit. Because if you wait, you're always going to be waiting, because you'll never feel like you have enough. So just starting those habits, and that's the whole thing, is all of this is just habits and mindset, because I don't want people thinking about it all the time. I don't want this to be all you think about is how much you're investing and how much you're saving and how much you have and what's going on. It shouldn't, it should be something that just becomes a habit that you don't have to think about in a perfect world.
Yeah. And just as another side example on this investing, so my son is actually taking this stock market course, which he chose to do. And he's my kid that like wants to spend on like, the power upgrades on all these games that he's playing on his electronics, which I guess this is awesome stuff. But I was like, well, maybe, you can see how some of this money can actually work. And he's learning about bonds and all this stuff that's over my head. But he, as part of this class, they had a project. They were given $100,000 in play money, and they had to pick their stocks and how much of that. And we're only 3 weeks in, and he's made $6,000, which is, he's like, oh my goodness. And he's like, right now, I was just checking, he's ranked third in his class, and he was first the first week. But then I think somebody just like doubled down on airlines or, stuff with travel. And so that person has surpassed them. But anyways, just to even say, I mean, obviously stock markets can go up and down, and that there's a lot of risk there. But even just thinking about, in 2 small weeks or whatever, you take this amount of money and you can make something out of it relatively quickly, which is kind of nice. So, but yeah, in terms of investing longer term, definitely lean on somebody who understands how investing works and all that. But
well, and it depends. I mean, it sounds like your son loves this stuff, so he'll probably want to do a lot of it. Like even as he gets older, he'll probably have more like more self
awareness about it.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that's because he's into it. I know a lot of people have sort of read this chapter and they wanted more detail. If you want to learn about it, there's a lot of ways to learn about it.
Yeah.
But that's not necessary to create wealth. So I mentioned Warren Buffett earlier. He has told his estate, don't handpick stocks, just invest in the entire stock market and just, buy these index funds and invest in the entire market. Don't try to time it. Don't try to handpick. Like that's what he's asked his estate to do with that when he's no longer around. So when even Warren Buffett is saying like, you don't overthink it, it's not something you have to do. I mean, it's, if you enjoy it, go for it. But if your goal is just your money growing for you and not worrying about it, there's easier ways.
Awesome. Yeah. And I know we're coming up on time, so we're probably going to go over a little bit, but let's talk about that last habit.
Sure. Well, and last one, and again, this comes back to the mindset a little bit, but it's give and you'll have more. And it really is this idea of, financially you will have more as well. Like there is some energy to it, and less like studies around it. The more people give, the more they have. And energetically and socially and all these things. So I try to illustrate how that happens, because there's a lot of fear around, scarcity and things of that nature. So once you start giving, it breaks all of that down, and it's very hard to not feel rich or like you have, more than you think you do as you give and are in a position to give. So that's sort of the fourth rule. And then it all wraps up basically around this idea of the whole point is trying to create this freedom. Because if you follow these steps and your money starts to grow, and it starts earning money for you, then like you said, like with your son with the 6,000, that's going to be up and down. But over time, money invested, a lot of these people with wealth, like their investments are becoming their income stream. So it's not that they're out there hustling or doing something else. They have enough saved that those investments become an income stream that'll then eventually replace their own income stream. And all that just creates more freedom. And it's not like there's a end goal. I keep talking about this journey anywhere on that spectrum as you had more. So even you were mentioning, Rebecca, like it's a little tight. As you started saving, if you had your money making some money and you had more savings, there's just a bit more freedom to that. And that freedom could be in the form of a sabbatical or a different job or just, less anxiety. It just becomes more freedom as that money grows and grows and grows. So there isn't a specific goal. It's just let that happen and you'll start finding yourself creating more and more of this freedom, eventually to a point where, if we think of pure financial freedom, where your money earns everything that you would need to live off. So yeah.
So 4 habits. I might need to table the other deeper stuff. We might need to do a part 2 or something. But this, because it's so powerful, and I feel like everybody in the chat is just quiet because they're just soaking in information. And if you guys have any questions that you want to, obviously, you could share that now, or you can also, for those of you who are in the ASC, can share it in the community, because David is now a member and he can field other conversations and whatnot from there, because I'm sure he's got a wealth of knowledge, especially with a financial advising background, right? And just understanding how that money works. But so to kind of summarize, right, it's not about having more money. Is really understanding what your awesome stuff is and focusing on that, and then instilling habits of spending, saving, investing, and giving in order to create this freedom, this financial freedom that we are all really wanting, to then not have the money thing be a conversation piece of just always trying to chase after. Did I summarize that?
Yeah. Well, and quickly, I right now, these are universal classic rules. That's why they land and they're so simple. I try to package in a way that is different so kids and adults will get it, but they're universal. So right now we have this culture where we're really, it's almost like a hustle mindset, or a gig economy where we try to have a side job and do this and create all these things, and people are talking about Bitcoin or Tesla. These habits, this does create wealth. This is that income stream. You don't need to do all these other things that you think you're doing. If you love what you're doing with your job, you don't need to force early retirement if you enjoy what you're doing. This is just habits that'll create that freedom, so money is no longer something that you're struggling with or striving for more of.
Yeah. Rebecca, do you have any other ahas that you want to share? Or if anybody else wants to also share any ahas as we're starting to wrap up and bring to close. Sorry, Rebecca, I'm putting you on the spot.
No, it's okay. No, I always enjoy, and money's been a thing for me for a very long time. And so it's just been this kind of slow drip of making progress in my own mindset around it, and breaking down belief systems from whatever childhood, all the things. And so every time I hear these conversations now, I'm I've come such a long way. So it feels really validating of just my understanding and the way that I am, even though I have a long way to go still from where I want to be. But it was even just that thing you just said around retirement. I love what I do. And so when people start getting all excited about retirement, I had and my ex was so into this, we must do all these things so we can retire at 50. And I'm I don't want to, I love what I do. I'm going to work as long as I want to work. So I just really enjoyed your approach to it, and kind of giving permission to knowing that there is there are so many voices in this conversation, and still it's this feel good thing. And even Warren Buffett, just don't overthink it, and kind of goes back to that thing we were mentioning before we hit record, just that feeling state. So I really like having you share that, and it makes me feel like I'm figuring it out slowly but surely.
Yeah. Well, and taking away all the emotion, we have so much judgment and guilt, and there's just one way, or you have to do this. You don't. Money is just a tool. It's just a thing. And as as we start talking about it and taking away all the, the shame or insecurity or other outside voices around it and just letting people be, I think we're in a better place. So, yeah.
I want to ask one money mindset question, just for, I think that there are a lot of people I mean, maybe this is just me, but I think there are other people in the community that are either entrepreneurs or trying to make their own money, or even just trying to ask for a raise or all of that stuff. But then having this fear around asking for more, when you feel that you are worthy for it, but then you just, there's I don't want to, I actually have to tie my self-worth into this and kind of prove that like I need more. And do you have any commentary? I know this is like a loaded question that we could probably do a whole hour in itself, but just to kind of give people, because I do think that the whole conversation of money, I think we all, I still struggle with it. I feel, I'm in a good financial space, but I still, struggle with it and, want to do things differently or have different resources to help fund certain things that I'm doing. But there's that, there's the mindset talk that happens in my mind of like, am I worthy to, people willing to pay, to give me that, make that investment in the work that I'm doing, et cetera. So do you have any words of wisdom for people who are in this space of like I know that I can, I understand all of these habits and I'd like to make more money, but it's even just the ability of like asking for more, or, that could even be, increasing prices for an offering that you have, or asking for the raise from your boss. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I like that you call it a mindset thing. So it is mindset.
Yeah.
And so for me, a big sort of aha around this mindset, because we hear, again, there's all these judgments like, oh, you're asking this, you should double what you're asking, or you should quadruple, or if you want more, you have to do this. It's a lot less about, percentages or how much you should ask, what you're doing. And it is all mindset. So if you are asking for a raise or more from a client or something of that nature, for me, I found anyway, if I don't believe it, is not going to happen. So if you ask me how much, how much are your rates? And even if I don't wince, but you can hear it in my voice, because it's like, and I'm hedging because I don't feel comfortable. And I just don't, I feel like you're going to think it's too much, or if I can't convince myself, there's no way I'm going to convince someone else. So it really is mindset. Like there is no magic number. There is no magic amount. Like you need to feel comfortable where, no, this is it. And I do feel comfortable that amount. And so usually for a lot of us, it's almost like it's an incremental thing where I can go this high and not wince, and I feel that's comfortable. But if I go past that, then I just don't believe it. So you go as far as you're comfortable and ask. And then once that happens, you can, maybe you'll be comfortable pushing a little higher, or look around you as well for people who are doing similar things, asking for more. Like that always helps for that validation as well. But really, you need to believe it, and you can feel it. Like as you're asking for it, don't ask if you don't believe it, because you need to believe it.
Yeah. And sometimes I think too, bringing that price, even if it feels lower, it's building that confidence to be like, you know what? No, I'm worth more. I'm raising my rates. And if people don't want to jump on that bandwagon, then bye-bye.
That's the thing. Like when you feel that, your chance of success is pretty high.
Yeah.
When you're just like, no, this is right. But if you're like, well, will they, should they, is it good? And you start talking yourself out of it, it's mindset. So that's a mindset piece.
We're gonna have to do a whole like money mindset dive into all of these things. And I think a lot of people might be scared to ask these questions, like, because there's a lot of mindset that's wrapped in in money based on, what you were saying. It's just like, all we talk about is like how to make more, what company is going to give you a higher salary or better benefits package, or the whole thing. It's more about that rather than like what's really going to truly make me happy. So, but I probably should cut the conversation because I know other people are probably like, okay, let me just ingest this all. David Delisle, everyone, he is in our community, the Accountability Success Circle. And for those of you who don't know what the ASC is, check out www.accountabilitysuccesscircle.com. If you're looking for just an awesome group of people who are, all trying to accomplish goals together in the most fun way. We are your community, safe and focused on the goals and the personal growth, away from all the social media chatter. And it's a fun group. And Gary is in the chat. He's like, buy David's book. It's simple, so simple and perfect for kids and adults. So The Golden Quest, Your Journey to a Rich Life, is on Amazon. Is it just anywhere, any booksellers?
Yeah, so bookstores can carry it as well. My distributor should be able to get into most bookstores. You can also get it directly if you go to theawesomestuff.com. And that's how you can reach me and get it directly as well. So yeah.
Yes. And if you have any personal questions that you might want to ask David, are you open to that in the ASC? People can
for sure
send you a message and can engage in conversations. And if you guys are feeling like, I know that this is like a very heavy topic, and that's why I love it. And there's a lot of like crickets in the chat and everything. But if you do have stuff that you're struggling with, know that you're not alone, number one. And number two, I think that the more that we can talk about it and just kind of put ourselves out there, it'll be easier for us to find the answers. I have a lot of questions too. And I think money mindset is something that I constantly struggle with and I'm still trying to figure out. And so you're definitely not alone. But I would love to definitely continue the conversation. We've got a couple more challenges that are going to be posted by the leadership team for the rest of the month. About money. So keep an eye on those. Maybe they'll have some good challenges to help you instill some of these habits that David was sharing with us today. And David, just thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and doing it in a fun way. I think that that's like the thing that really drew me to wanting to have a conversation with you, because, money can sometimes not be fun. But when you put it with like dragons and pictures and like traveling it in a, what is it? It's like a what are
the
those?
Airship, the Zeppelin.
Yeah, it was like super cool. It's a very fun way to kind of think about things, and it can be very simple, but we tend to make it super complicated. And so, take some time to digest the information and, start with habit number one. If you feel like you've got that unlocked, then move on to the next one and slowly build off of that. And I think that that'll get you on your way, and then we can deal with the little nuances along the way, right?
Yeah.
Rebecca, do you have any last? Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
I did try to build them where, start step one and build your way up. So
yeah, for sure. And Rebecca, do you have any last thoughts or things to share?
No, I was going to say we'll keep the conversation rolling through the month in the ASC.
Yes. Awesome. David, thank you so much for hanging with us today, sharing your wisdom. Those of you in the ASC, we'll see you back in the community. And for those of you who missed it, obviously the replay is out there forever. So thank you so much. And we will say goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks. And the stream is